It was one of those rainy New York afternoons when the sky looked tired, painted in shades of silver and gray, the kind of weather that makes people hurry. Everyone except her. Emma sat in the corner of a small cafe in Brooklyn, her sketchbook open, her world silent except for the scratching of her pencil. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and rain-damp coats, of stories that hadn't yet begun. She was lost in lines and shapes, sketching how sunlight might fall across a living room window she'd never seen. Her latte sat forgotten, a soft swirl of foam fading away, much like the days she spent waiting for life to surprise her. And that's when it did. The bell above the cafe door rang, and a man walked in, hair wet, coat dripping, eyes scanning for an empty seat. There was only one. He smiled awkwardly and asked, "Mind if I sit?" His voice was calm, kind, a little tired. Emma didn't look up right away. She just nodded, letting the seat across from her fill with the presence of a stranger. But when she finally glanced up, that half-second look that changes everything, she saw something in him that stopped her. It wasn't his looks or the way his tie sat loose around his neck. It was the calm in his eyes, like someone who'd seen storms but still believed in mornings. He ordered black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and she couldn't resist teasing. "Only people with broken hearts drink it that way." He laughed, that deep, genuine laugh that made nearby heads turn. "Then I guess mine must be pretty broken," he said, and she smiled, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. That single exchange cracked open a door neither of them knew they'd been standing behind. The rain outside turned heavier, but inside that cafe, time slowed down. Their small talk turned to real talk, dreams, work, the weight of expectations. He told her his name was Ryan, a software engineer working for a company that ate away at his nights. "I'm building a future," he said, half proud, half tired. She told him she was an interior designer, one who painted when clients stopped calling. "I build dreams," she said, half joking, half truth. He liked that. They stayed long after the rain stopped. The cafe emptied around them. Lights dimmed, yet their words filled the air like music. Soft, genuine, new. He told her he wanted to create something lasting. She told him she wanted to design spaces that made people feel alive. Somewhere in that conversation, their sentences stopped ending. They started blending. When they finally stepped out into the fading drizzle, he offered to walk her home. The city smelled like wet asphalt and promise. By the time they reached her block, they both knew something rare had begun, the kind of connection that doesn't ask for permission. Before leaving, Ryan hesitated and said, "I don't usually do this, but can I see you again?" Emma smiled, the kind of smile that carries both hope and caution. "You just did," she said softly, and walked away, leaving him smiling under the flickering streetlight, raindrops sliding down his face, heart racing like a teenager's. Days passed, and texts became calls. Calls became long evenings. They met again at the same cafe, this time not as strangers but as something undefined yet undeniable. He'd bring his laptop, pretending to work, while she sketched quietly across from him. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. And somehow, silence between them felt like conversation. On their third meeting, he asked her what she believed love was. She thought for a while, staring out at the rain, and said, "It's not butterflies, it's peace." He never forgot that. They explored the city together. Art galleries, bookstores, rooftops. One evening, standing on the roof of his small apartment, they watched the skyline shimmer. "That," he said, pointing at the horizon, his favorite coffee mug, his playlist playing when he got home. But most nights he didn't notice. And the ones when he did, his thank you sounded more like habit than heart. Sometimes she sat by the window at night, watching city lights blink like distant stars. She'd whisper to herself, "He's just tired." But deep inside, she knew something was fading. She missed the man who'd take her out just to see her smile, the one who drew hearts on fogged glass, who'd whisper, "You're my home," when the world got too loud. Now he came home, collapsed on the couch, and scrolled through his phone while she stared at the same four walls. The silence between them grew so thick it felt like a third person living in their home. One Sunday she asked him softly, "Do you still love me like before?" He smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "Of course, I'm doing all this for us." She smiled too, but her heart whispered, "Then why does it feel like you're leaving me behind?" Her art became her therapy. She painted until her hands hurt. Canvases filled with women looking out windows, men walking away, hearts breaking in silence. When she exhibited them at a local gallery, people called them beautiful. Only she knew they were confessions. One evening, her old friend Mia came by and said, "You look tired, Em. Is everything okay?" Emma smiled and said, "I'm fine." But when Mia left, she cried, quietly, so the house wouldn't hear. Meanwhile, Ryan kept climbing the corporate ladder. Promotions, raises, recognition. He got everything he wanted except the one thing that mattered. He didn't realize he was trading moments for milestones, laughter for meetings, love for deadlines. He started coming home later, sometimes past midnight. When Emma stopped waiting up, he thought it was because she understood, but it was really because she'd stopped expecting one rainy evening. She cooked his favorite meal, just like she used to. The aroma filled the room, reminding her of the nights they danced in the kitchen, laughing over spilled sauce and burnt bread. She sat waiting. Minutes turned to hours. The food went cold. The candle flickered and died. When the clock struck 1, she finally stood, picked up her sketchbook and drew a simple picture. A table set for 2, one chair empty. She titled it, "The Wait." The next morning, when Ryan saw the drawing on the counter, he smiled absent-mindedly and said, "That's beautiful," not realizing it was about him. He kissed her cheek and rushed out, leaving his coffee untouched. The door closed. The silence stayed. In the days that followed, even small things began to disappear. Morning kisses, inside jokes, shared glances. Their Polaroid wall gathered dust. The fairy lights they once strung together flickered out one by one. The plants she used to water started wilting. She replaced them, but nothing could fix what had already withered. The house that once felt like a dream now felt like a memory. Emma stopped sketching happy spaces. Ryan stopped looking for her eyes when he spoke. And somewhere in the middle of all that nothingness, love quietly slipped away. Not with a storm, not with a scream, but with silence. One night, as she turned off, the storm began to fade, but inside him it had just begun. He sat there until dawn, the papers unsigned, the coffee cold, and the realization heavy that love doesn't end with a goodbye. It ends the moment you stop showing up. The apartment was small, almost empty. Just a couch, a bed, a few boxes, and the sound of a man learning to live with silence. Ryan had moved out a week after Emma left, but it felt like he'd been gone for years. Gone from the world, gone from himself. The first night there, he sat on the floor with a takeout box, the smell of Chinese food filling a space that didn't feel like home. The walls were bare, pale, indifferent. When he tried to sleep, he could still hear her voice. Not in words, but in the little things. The clink of her bracelets, the soft hum she made when she was sketching, the faint laugh she gave when he tried to cook. It was strange how silence could still sound like someone. Every morning he woke up and reached for the other side of the bed, only to find nothing but cold sheets and regret. Days blended into nights. He threw himself into work again, but this time, it didn't numb the ache. The success he'd once chased felt meaningless now, like climbing to the top of a building only to realize he'd left the view behind. He stopped talking in meetings, stopped replying to friends, stopped pretending he was fine. The truth was, he wasn't. The truth was he missed her, not just her presence, but the peace she brought into chaos. He'd pass by cafes, art galleries, and furniture stores and think of her. Once he saw a plant by a window, the same kind she used to talk to when he was not listening, and for a second, he had to turn away. Because grief, he learned, wasn't loud. It was gentle and endless, like waves that never stop returning to the shore. One evening, while unpacking his last box, he found it. Her sketchbook. The cover was worn, the pages slightly bent, a small paint stain on the edge. He froze. It felt like holding a heartbeat. He sat down slowly, running his hand over the familiar surface. He hadn't seen it since that night, the night everything broke. For a moment, he was afraid to open it. But when he did, the smell of her studio, paint, paper, faint perfume, seemed to fill the air again. Each page was a window into their life. The early drawings were bright, sunlit rooms, smiling faces, love in motion. Then, slowly, the colors began to fade. He saw empty chairs, rainy windows, silhouettes sitting apart. The progression was painful, like watching love die one sketch at a time. And then, on the very last page, he found something that made his hands shake. It wasn't a drawing, it was a note, written in her delicate handwriting, the kind he used to tease her about because she wrote her R's like art. The note said, "He'll never understand that I didn't want to leave him. I just wanted him to look at me like before." He stared at the words until they blurred. His chest tightened, his breath shallow. He whispered the line again and again as if trying to convince himself it wasn't too late. But it was. That single sentence carried everything she never said. All the waiting, the wanting, the pain. He pressed the sketchbook to his chest and broke down for the first time in years, really broke down. The kind of cry that doesn't make noise. The kind that comes from the deepest corners of a person's soul. He realized then that he hadn't lost her to someone else. There was no other man, no betrayal, no villain to blame. He had lost her to his own neglect, to his silence, his absence, his inability to see the woman who was still trying every day to be seen. The realization hit him like a slow, heavy wave. He remembered every small moment he'd ignored, the dinners gone cold, the anniversaries forgotten, the way she'd stop mid-sentence when he picked up his phone. Those weren't small things. Those were her silent goodbyes, scattered across days he never noticed. He spent that night walking through the city, rain soaking through his jacket, hands in his pockets. No destination, just motion. Every streetlight felt like a memory, every raindrop like a confession. He passed the cafe where they first met. The lights were off, chairs stacked, the window fogged. He pressed his hand to the glass for a moment, whispering, "I should have looked up." A couple passed by, laughing under one umbrella, and for the first time he didn't feel envy. He felt remorse, a pure, aching kind that doesn't fade with time. In the days that followed, he started changing, slowly, quietly, not for her, but because of her. He began waking up early, cooking breakfast, sitting by the window with coffee, not black anymore, but with sugar, because she once said, "Bitterness doesn't make you stronger, Ryan. It just makes you lonely." He started keeping her sketches on the wall, not as reminders of loss, but as lessons. He took up painting, clumsy at first, messy but honest. He painted the rain, the skyline, the reflection of light on water, all the things she used to love. And with every brushstroke, he felt closer to her, like she was teaching him even from miles away. One evening, he found himself writing in an old notebook, not code, not emails, but thoughts. "Maybe love doesn't disappear when someone leaves," he wrote. "Maybe it just changes shape, from touch to memory, from presence to purpose. That night he finally slept without dreams of her leaving. Instead, he dreamt of her smiling, painting by the window again, sunlight in her hair. Weeks turned into months, and though the ache never left, it softened. He stopped checking her social media, stopped wondering if she missed him. Instead, he started becoming the man she always wanted him to be, the one who looked up, who noticed the small things, who lived fully. He began volunteering at a local arts center, teaching kids how to draw, something he never thought he'd do. But every time he watched a child smile at their own creation, he felt her there whispering, "See, the name felt That's right." what loved, not as a mourning, but as a thank you. The gallery was filled with art that spoke of love and loss, paintings of sunsets that looked like endings but also like beginnings, sketches of hands almost touching but never quite meeting. People came from across the city, some crying quietly, some smiling through tears. On the opening night, he stood in the middle of the crowd watching strangers find pieces of themselves in his story. And for the first time in a long time, he felt grateful for everything that had broken him. As the evening ended and the lights dimmed, he noticed something at the entrance. A single white rose laying on the welcome table, its petals fresh with morning dew. Tucked beneath it was a small note, the familiar handwriting curling like soft whispers from the past. "I saw what you built. I'm proud of you. I told you. Dreams don't die, Ryan. They just find new shapes." He stood there for a long time, smiling through tears that no longer hurt. He didn't need to turn around to know she had been there. Maybe for a moment. Maybe longer. He looked up at the ceiling of the gallery, bathed in the golden glow of soft lamps, and whispered, "Goodbye, Emma. And thank you for teaching me how to live again." That night, when the crowd was gone and the lights were low, he stood alone before his favorite painting, one he had titled "The Light We Left Behind." It showed two figures standing under a streetlight, one walking away, the other watching, but both surrounded by the same soft glow. He touched the canvas lightly and whispered, "She didn't leave. She just moved into the light." As he stepped outside, the cold air kissed his face and the city felt different. Not lonely anymore, just alive. He walked home with a small smile, the kind you wear when you know you've finally made peace with your past. At the door of his apartment, he paused, looked back at the gallery one last time, and said softly, "She asked for divorce. But I was the reason." Then he turned off the lights and walked away, leaving only the soft glow of the gallery window illuminating the street like a final memory. The next morning, the sun rose over New York, washing everything in gold. Ryan sat by the window, coffee in hand, watching the world wake up. He opened her sketchbook one last time, flipped to the first drawing they'd made together, a small cafe, two people laughing by the window, and smiled. He knew now that some stories don't end when people leave. They end when hearts find peace. He closed the book gently and whispered, "Goodbye doesn't mean it's over. It just means we finally understood." Love isn't measured by how long you hold on. It's measured by how beautifully you let go. Some people come to teach you what love feels like, others to teach you what peace means. When you learn both, that's when you truly heal. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more real and emotional stories every day.